again, and welcome back to Newsmax Now.
It is the Tuesday edition. It's good to have everybody with us. Tens of thousands of Iraqis are now fleeing Ramadi after ISIS captures control of that city. It looks like that battle in that city is just beginning. Iraqi forces and Shia militias are preparing for a counterattack against the radical militants. The White House says the fall of Ramadi is a setback, but retired Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North says it's much worse than that.
What you just heard from this White House is a bald-faced lie. Last week, you remember, General Dempsey was saying it really isn't of great strategic value. Now it's a minor setback. It's not. It is a catastrophe of unparalleled proportions.
Well, more than 40,000 people have fled Ramadi in the past few days. ISIS fighters have already reportedly set up defensive positions and laid down landmines and IEDs around that city.
3 Marines remain in the hospital after a crash of a military aircraft in Hawaii. It happened over the weekend. 1 person died. The Marines say the Osprey landed too hard at a military base just outside of Honolulu. Investigators are still trying to figure out what went wrong. A 15-year-old Montana boy has died. He was apparently shot by a friend by accident. Police say Mackie and Schulte went to a friend's house early Sunday morning and was tossing pebbles at the window trying to wake his friend up. That's when the other boy became startled. He grabbed a gun and fired off a shot outside the window. The shot hit Mackin in the head. Another boy who was also there was not hurt. Waco, Texas police are still on high alert today after a biker brawl and shootout on Sunday. They are worried about reprisal attacks after 9 bikers were killed at a meeting between several biker groups. That Sunday, nearly 200 people were arrested.
We had wounded inside, we had people stabbed, we had people shot, and we had people beat. That disturbance moved into the parking lot very quickly.
And the shooting went down at the Twin Peaks Sports Bar and Grill. The company has now revoked the franchise for that restaurant for not providing enough security.
Several conservatives say they are cautiously optimistic about the president's new restrictions on sending military surplus gear to local police departments.
We've seen how militarized gear can sometimes give people a feeling like there's an occupying force as opposed to a force that's part of the community that's protecting them and serving them.
Well, presidential candidate Rand Paul commends the move, saying there's no reason for a 20-ton military vehicle to roll down any U.S. city streets. Also, Trevor Burrus, a fellow at the Cato Institute, tells BuzzFeed this is a welcome change. The FBI has been taking a hard look at the front of that locomotive of the Amtrak train that derailed in Philadelphia. There have now been questions about whether that train was hit by something just before the crash that killed 8 people. But investigators now say there is no evidence that that damage on the windshield was actually caused by gunfire. With trains rolling through the area, the first lawsuits have now been filed against Amtrak on behalf of 4 people hurt in that crash. The Supreme Court is set to rule on same-sex marriage next month, but Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg gives us a hint on how she'll stand, although we probably knew this. The justice mentioned the Constitution when she officiated a same-sex wedding over the weekend. That has sparked a lot of talk over whether she was just giving her opinion or if the court will rule in favor of gay marriage. The High Court heard arguments for and against same-sex marriage last month.
Elian Gonzalez wants to come back to America, but the 21-year-old Cuban, who, as you may recall, was at the center of an international tug of war when he was found floating off the Florida coast back in 1999. He says he wants to come back, but as a tourist. Speaking to ABC News, Gonzalez says he wants to thank the American people for all the love they showed him, and he wants to go to a baseball game. Idaho lawmakers have now approved new child support rules, undoing a decision that threatened an international treaty. Last month, Idaho legislators rejected federal child support rules over fears that that treaty could subject American courts to rulings made around the world under Islamic Sharia law. But federal officials say there are protections built into the treaty. It's designed to make it easier for single parents to collect international child support.
On the Steve Malzberg Show, retired Navy SEAL and author of Battle on the Home Front, Carl Higbie, joined Steve Malzberg to discuss the deteriorating situation in Ramadi.
If we had left some residual troops there, this might not have been an issue. Now, the President Obama keeps saying that we have, we're defeating ISIS, we have it on the run, we just killed that guy in Syria. thanks to Spec War. But the fact of the matter is we can't continue to give one city away back to ISIS for every 1 leader we kill. It's not a fair trade. It's not working out in our favor.
No, not at all.
So Ramadi's a key line. It's on a supply line. It's right on the main drag there. It's a central point of resources for the entire country.
A lot of oil involved there.
A lot of oil involved there. A lot of oil passes through there. I mean, it's on the main drag, and it has all the government resources that we built up there that were sustaining our presence there. So now they're going to use those resources to sustain their own presence. So.
Shouldn't we have bombed the heck out of those government buildings once we saw the flag flying over it? Can't we be bombing convoys every single day of ISIS convoys that are rolling into these cities? Why are we doing what seems to me like nothing?
We could, but as I was there when we were pulling out, part of the issue is that we were giving these compounds over to the Iraqi forces, which are, some of those are ISIS allegiances now, and they're taking them over. So the whole point was for us to take our infrastructure and make it their infrastructure. Right. We did it with power plants, roads, facilities, everything. And
now they're either deserting or they're becoming part of them.
Yep, and all the weapons we're using to supply the rebels and the Kurds are now in their hands too. So,
This never-ending saga.
Very concerning, and Steve had a great question there. You see those ISIS flags, you see the parade of ISIS vehicles, you see why can't they just run through there with an A-10 Warthog and just mow those guys down?
You could say that about
that is the emotional
though.
response. I know that maybe not the best strategic way to go about this, I guess, if you give the Pentagon credit here. Also interesting to note, Politico today, the interview with former Defense Secretary Bob Gates saying the U.S. has, quote, no strategy at all right now in terms of dealing with
They've been
this.
saying that for a long time, and of course a lot of people are blaming Obama for pulling out troops too soon, saying that was the reason we are seeing a rise in ISIS.
And then you also hear the counter argument, which I'm not backing this argument, but that sooner or later the U.S. troops were going to have to come out and the Iraqis were going to have to step up.
Right, this has been the never-ending war, it seems like, for a lot of people. Thousands of our men and women have died as a result. And some people would say, for what?
We had that discussion, and Mr. Higbee mentioned this, Carl Higbee mentioned this, the kill-capture raid that went on in Syria over the weekend, an example of success. And you think about this in terms of how far we've come or haven't come in the 4 years since the kill-capture raid on Osama bin Laden, and that is the topic of this American Moment. Bill Curtis takes us through the kill-capture raid for Osama bin Laden that happened this month 4 years ago.
In the early morning hours of May 2nd, 2011, the Central Intelligence Agency launched Operation Neptune Spear and set into motion a mission to bring one of the world's most notorious terrorists to justice. All indications were that Osama bin Laden was asleep as the U.S. Naval Special Warfare Development Group, known as SEAL Team 6, approached his highly secured 3-story Pakistani-based compound. From entry to exit took approximately 45 minutes, with the bulk of time being used to gather up a plethora of al-Qaeda intelligence materials. When located in his living quarters on the 3rd floor of his compound, the head of the Islamist group al-Qaeda was found using his young wife as a shield. The Obama administration reported the 54-year-old terrorist was given a traditional Islamic burial at sea. 9 years, 7 months, and 21 days following his infamous attack on New York's Twin Towers, killing thousands of innocent civilians, its mastermind, Osama bin Laden, was dead. You're watching An American Moment on Newsmax TV.
Wow.
I remember that moment. It was on a Saturday night. The White House Correspondents' Dinner was going on, I guess, earlier in the evening. This is the earlier stages of social media. We started getting these reports that the president was going to speak. It was very, very strange.
I think for our generation especially, that you always hear like our parents talk about, they all know where they were when Kennedy was assassinated. I think it's the same thing.
Well, and again, thinking back, we thought that was a mission accomplished type of moment again, but apparently not the case. We still are fighting this war, and we'll be fighting it for a very long time.
Well, still coming up here on Newsmax Now, an ABC News anchor known for delivering the headlines continues to make headlines of his own. Former NBC correspondent Ike Siemens joins us to discuss the future of ABC frontman George Stephanopoulos. Was he a gamble worth taking?
Also up for discussion, the Vatican move that outraged Israel and what it could mean for peace relations in the Middle East. Plus, we're warning you, don't get sick this July. Don't go to the hospital. You'll be very concerned when we tell you why. Just make sure you take good care of yourself for the next month or so. We got that and much more coming up when Newsmax Now returns.
Drinking my
right after
hot
this.
tea right now.